And if he's out there, I give that man more power to him. The man's a genius. He's a genius for doing what he did and getting away and still be able to record. Because from what I understand, Interscope said, we understand you had to go away, but we still got bills to pay. We still got a contract. You got to go to the studio. I don't care where you're at. You go to the studio. We're going to finish this contract out. You know, and Pac says stuff like, I got another album out. That's what I'm talking about more. He was a genius. He knew how to say enough to let you know I'm still out there. And he's saying stuff like, we ain't dead yet on the beginning of intros. We ain't dead yet means we ain't dead yet. That doesn't mean that I died in Las Vegas gunned down. That means I am not dead, and I'm going to tell y'all I'm not dead. I'm going to clown on in this studio and let you know y'all can't kill me. I'm smart enough to get away from that. We ain't dead means we ain't dead, period. That's what that means. 2001 is not 96. That's a different copyright.
There's definitely evidence out there, you know what I'm saying, that could suggest that, which is why we, so many people question it. You know what I mean? Like, and bring it back to the Kathy Scott interview, is everybody still on the line, I guess? Genius, you still there? Sean Park?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah.
Well, and bringing it full circle with the Kathy Scott interview, Genius and Dre, one of the things that I asked her about that we talked about was she mentions that in her book, she mentions that the cops made a statement about they let Orlando Anderson go, that they let him leave the MGM because he didn't file a complaint or an incident report. And in Nevada, there's a law that no victim, no crime. And they, the police cited that law in some sort of, press release or whatever. And, you brought that up in your book, Dre, that, there's this law in Nevada, no victim, no crime, and this evidence, this anti-prostitution protester that, made it look like he died and then show up 2 weeks later, and then they're saying that they couldn't even find no kind of criminal charges because there was no victim, he didn't file no report or whatever. And then there's another thing in her book where she says the police said, that for whatever reason, the public feels he staged his death. And so it's like, for the police to even get up and make a statement at a press conference that that there was such a tremendous belief at that time by fans that the police would even comment on it. And he said for whatever reason. So then that brings us again to the question of what also would be the motive. And you don't provide the citation during your book, but you have this quote about this 1998 newspaper that had predictions for 1998 that rumors that slain rapper Tupac Shakur reached a fever pitch until he emerged from self-imposed seclusion and admits a lookalike was going down in his place, his shocking new mission to rid the world of violence. And it's just kind of ironic that he was going to Six Deuce to do this charity event for this retired Las Vegas police officer that had a boxing organization, and so it was an organization they were trying to do nonviolence through boxing sports, through getting youth involved with boxing and the sports and the self-defense side of it and ending violence. So he was going through an event as part of his condition of probation that his attorney, George Kalisis, had set up or whatever. So that, I think, is just kind of real interesting. And now, all these years later, 13 years later, Genius, there's a police officer that's actually saying that they kept Orlando Anderson at the MGM for several hours. They're changing the story now and saying that he was actually there for several hours. And she was like, but that's just one officer or whatever, that's just one officer, whatever. But still, why isn't that officer being how can one officer just step out of line now 13 years later and say, hey, we actually had Orlando Anderson on the wraps for several hours, and we just never made that a part of the public domain information because we was really trying to, find out who did it or whatever, like something like that. I don't know, but that just would flip the script and everything too. So it's like, I don't know, man. I think it's kind of crazy.
Well, the thing about it is that it's difficult for me to talk about that last night. I've just got to be upfront with everybody. It's difficult for me to discuss that last night in Vegas altogether because, for one, it's like it misconstrued Pac's legacy and who he was. Because if people who didn't really follow Pac and they just seen the documentary about that, the first thing they're going to get in their mind, fix in their mind, is he was a thug, he was some troublemaker, and they're going to have some type of disgruntlement towards him. He's seen kicking somebody and gang banging, and he got shot or whatever. That's all they're going to see. That's why it's difficult for me to even talk about that. Because, for one, y'all know my beliefs on that anyway. Not just beliefs, but my findings on that anyway. But, two, it just looks like it just didn't represent who Pac was and what he was doing, what he was trying to do. It just was, again, the way I look at it and many people look at it, that was just a diversion to do what he had to do. So you're gonna see a lot of stuff that just doesn't add up that last night because it was, in a lot of people's minds and a lot of people who studied it, it was just that. It was just a diversion. That's all it was. It was just a diversion. So you're going to see a lot of mixed up information and stuff that just doesn't add up because it was just a diversion. That night was a complete diversion so he can get away, get out of that spotlight, keep from getting imprisoned, and keep from dying. Because we know what happens to people who are very influential. They'll try to assassinate you or they'll try to imprison you to keep your influence. So that's what's real important. Pac had a major and has a major influence on people, and so it was very possible he had to get out of that because he had such a not just an artist but as a political. Because there's an old saying, the feds or the authorities, they don't mind people hearing you. They don't mind people hearing you. He said, and this is a Jordan Maxwell quote. He says, but when they begin to listen to you is when they start paying attention to you. And they told Jordan Maxwell that. And this is an older guy who has conspiracy theories teacher. They said, and then the feds called themselves, and they called him and they said, they're just hearing you now. He said, but when they start to listen to you is when we're going to have to take a different look at you. And they knock on his door at like 3 o'clock in the morning, And so, whether you believe in the conspiracy theories or not, we know all you got to do is type Tupac Shakur in the internet, and you'll see Google's tons of stuff on the man, okay? And that shows you how much influence he had on people, or has still to this day. So it really is, he became a political figure. Once you become a political figure, you better figure something out quick because you're either going to be dead or you're going to be incarcerated. Okay, there's a lot of,
that's real talk.
Yeah, you've got to understand that. I understand we want to put the pieces together of that last night and this and that, but it's very possible, ladies and gentlemen, and I know there's no ladies in there, but gentlemen, that it was just a diversion. That night was just a diversion so he could go do what he had to do, which is get away. I don't hear him say lyrics on that one song where he's talking about doing 95 down on 1 Street. It's stuck in the trunk.
It's possible. 95 down one way, man. All out begins with helicopter sounds, man. Never had a friend like me up in New Mix Classics as the helicopter sounds, man. That's what they, we still can't even get Kathy Scott just didn't even take seriously the fact that there is a woman on the Vegas Strip in front of the BMW saying that Pac was care flighted on a helicopter. It don't matter, like that woman, like who is she? You know what I'm saying? We should be able to talk to her. I want to interview her because, maybe she just made a mistake. But like I can draw like a very clear connection, man. That's kind of crazy also because, Kathy Scott she said that she was woken from her sleep at like 3 o'clock in the morning from a police officer. to go get on the scene. Like she was prepped to go to the scene of the crime immediately and start investigating. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's just a lot of weird stuff. But my point is, I brought this up to Sean the other day because we was talking about it, and in her book, in their first edition, there's a point where she says a conspiracy of this magnitude could not happen because this is XX. These are all the people that would have to be involved. And she goes through the list of like hospital workers, EMT workers, the police, da-da-da-da-da. She like lists the state patrol, blah, blah, blah. She lists everybody but the feds, all right? And so now you have this theory that was based off of, the video that they made that a special government organization was a part of the diversion. So, like, if everybody that was involved with the situation was, like, retired or off-duty police officers or, military, etc., then even I'm just listening to the song with the Outlaws. They said the streets is military. You got to be wary. The streets is military. Keep your eyes on the rollers, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that would make sense in terms of bringing it full circle with the white book. Hey, Junius, did you ever order the white book?
No, man, I ain't never get it yet.
Yeah, my man Sean Sparks just picked it up, and I know Dre ain't never picked it up either. But that's, I got
that link to it though.
That book is interesting. I mean, I see what you're saying, that it's possible that this person is speaking of some of the events that happened afterwards. But again, my book, Tupac Lives, and then the next one, it pushes people to think outside the box and see that there was another possibility, not just with Pac, but in this society that we live in. There's things that go on constantly every day. We cannot be believing that poisonous TV, okay, and that media that lies to it. That's why I constantly put on that snippet of network all over your site there to show that the guy is telling you right there how much that tube controls the mind. Because Tupac Lives pushes people to think outside the box, to open your eyes, think outside the religion, the authority figures of the society, think outside the government and the so-called alleged laws. They can play tricks. They can bend and lie to you right to your face and do a lot of things. They can pull a lot of magic. So that's what the type of work that I put out pushes the mind that's reading the work, because they're already there. It's nothing I'm doing. It's like, look, yeah, you're not crazy. You can think outside the box. But if you keep going with the flow of things, you're going to be like the rest of them. And I'm going to tell you right now, Jesus was not speaking the language of the rest of the people. Normally, the true prophets are doing completely opposite of what the masses are doing. And they're ostracized and they want to be killed or in prison or whatnot. That's what true prophets do. They do not do what the masses and the media and everybody else is doing. People can write 1 million books about what happened tonight and this and that, but it's just like the rest. And that's what distinguished my work from the rest. I'm not talking about what the rest of us talking. Jesus, this man we call Jesus, was not speaking what they were speaking at the time. And that's what set him aside. Pac was not speaking what the rest of them were saying. That's what set him aside. That's why he went to the level that he went to, because he wasn't speaking like a lot of the people that's not really sticking out right now. There's nobody in hip-hop that's sticking out like Pac did, because they're saying the same thing that the next man is saying. Pac said a lot of political things. He said a lot of controversial things in his music, and that's why he stood out. That's why he is the legend that he is to this day, because he did things differently. And unless we can do things differently, we're never going to stick out. And that's why I like to hear people's work and whatnot to see if they're sticking out from the rest, because that's what matters. That's how you're going to make mountains move. You know, there is a such thing as a power of one, and Pac was one of those people. He had that influence, and everybody loved and was fiending for, because they knew there was something special about him, and he was doing things different. You know, and that's just real talk, you know.